KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them. Whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury, San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Twelve minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Monday morning, August the 16th, 2021. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. 103.3 FM if you're listening in Durango, Colorado, and streaming everywhere else on Earth from our website at ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers. This is a visual radio program streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. Welcome aboard, everyone. We are glad that you are with us because this morning we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is local history and the Kiwanis Club, Rio del Sol Kiwanis. We'll be talking about their annual event, Dining with the Dead, which is back again this fall, coming up in September. We'll get the details about that event and also learn about some of the characters who will come back to life during this event, coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE. Later on this hour at 8:50 a.m., we'll be talking technology with Lewis Campbell from Synergy Computer Systems here in Farmington, so stay tuned for that. In the next hour, it's Roving with the Arts, our classical music program. Mick Hess will be joining us, of course, and hosting that program. He is playing music from Haydn this morning, so you'll hear more of that coming up next hour at 9:06 after the news, of course, on KSJE. And don't forget, in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can also connect with KSJE on our Instagram page as well. Let's talk about the weather forecast, shall we? Outside our studios after a lovely evening and night of some rain showers. It is 60 degrees in Farmington. Sunshine for now. We're expecting some partly sunny skies today with some clouds off and on, and some more scattered showers are possible this afternoon and this evening. Today's high, cooler than we've seen, 85 in Farmington today, 60 overnight, back up to 90 tomorrow with some scattered showers in the forecast, and 64 overnight, 82 with chance of scattered showers on Wednesday, 80 on Thursday, 82 on Friday, and back up to 85 with mostly sunny skies by Saturday, but still seems like maybe fall is in the air. Let me introduce my guests who are here with me this morning, as I mentioned, to talk about Dining with the Dead from the Rio del Sol Kiwanis Club in Farmington, of course. Jill McCreary is here. Good morning and welcome back to KSJE.
Thank you, Scott.
Good to have you here. Also joining us in the studio is one of the characters from Dining with the Dead. Cindy Yacovetti is here. Cindy, good morning to you and thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here. And Jill, let's talk a little bit about Dining with the Dead for folks maybe who haven't heard about it or maybe remember it, but of course we didn't have it last year, and
That's
so
right.
We've got it. It's back this year, right?
Right.
And this is a fundraiser for Kiwanis.
Yes, it is. This is our 8th year, and we're excited to be back with it, and we have a lot of wonderful pioneers that our audience can meet this year, so we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be another great year.
And once again, you have gotten me involved, haven't you?
I'm sorry?
Once again, you've gotten me involved.
Oh, of course.
Thank
Every
you.
year since its inception.
8 years? Has it really been 8 years?
It has.
Holy smokes. Well, it's a fun event, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. But we're showing some of the names of folks and some of the characters who are going to be part of this. I am Robert H. Woods this year, and
Yes.
he was another one of those kind of early pioneers who was here, gosh, almost when they opened the area up for settlement in San Juan
Right.
County, northwest New Mexico.
Right. And your character, Robert H. Woods, is one that the family was excited for us to portray.
No pressure. Great. Thanks. But
Right.
that's good. But he was a Civil War veteran.
Yes.
And then he actually grew up in back east in Buffalo, New York. He was born in Buffalo, New York, which is where I went to college. But few years apart, the two of us. when we were there.
Just 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, just a couple. But ended up coming to Farmington after living in Kansas for a while, and the story is interesting. He lost his sight in one eye when he got here to Farmington, so there's a little bit about that story that we'll regale everybody about. And but like most characters, his story is pretty interesting.
You know, after we decided we were going to portray Robert H. Woods, and I knew that he had built the first 2-story home here in Farmington, and I wanted to find this home, and so I've told you the story of how...
There he is, by the way, on the screen, everybody.
And so I dragged my husband along, and we went over, and this first 2-story house that Robert H. Woods built is right off of Cliffside Drive. And
Still standing. Still standing.
And it's still standing.
Right.
A lot of weeds up around it, but it's still standing. And in your story, you talk about taking your sons down and getting the rocks from the stones from the San Juan River.
From the river, right.
And cutting them.
Yeah.
And they're there.
Putting them in the foundation. Yeah,
Yes,
you can see
and
them.
down in the basement. And I was like, wow.
See? The story's true. Yeah. We know what we're talking about. There you go. Well, it's a cool event, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it for the 8th year. And of course, folks may remember a similar event that you did in May, which was the downtown kind of historical walk, which was kind of similar but kind of different.
Exactly.
But same kind of thing about focusing on local history and these local individuals who helped to kind of make Farmington what it is today, which is kind of the main point of this.
Exactly. And the difference in that was telling the early pioneer stories about their businesses and what brought them here and what their business was.
Right.
So our audience would walk along, and the pioneers would stand outside these storefronts and tell what they did.
Right. But this is a little different, and we're in the cemetery. It's dining with the dead, and again, you're dining, and then we're dead. Our part is that. But it's another great, one ticket, and you get a meal, and then you get on a guided tour around to the grave sites of these individuals, and most of whom are buried there. You have a few that maybe are buried elsewhere.
There's a few that are not.
But they're still there to tell their story.
Yes, because when we started doing this, we wanted to give the flavor of San Juan County and not just here in Farmington. That way we could bring in more stories.
Right.
So they're all from this
Without
area.
making people traipse to different cemeteries across the county.
And they visit
at the
just
moment.
for this one night.
They do. They're
Yeah.
pretty mobile ghosts is what happens. But exactly. Well, the details are, you can see all the people on the screen of who are going to be portraying different folks. And Cindy, I'm going to ask you about Nettie Locke in just a moment, because you're at the top of the list. How'd you get that? Look at you. Good job. But there we all are. And then, of course, the details are this event will be on September 11th in the Green Lawn Cemetery, 4 to 8 p.m., and
Right.
tickets are available over at Howard's Cleaners.
Those that are still left.
They're going quick, right?
They are.
And you've sold out every year.
Every year before the event.
So I would say if you're thinking about joining us, do it sooner than later. Buy your tickets.
Correct.
Because chances are they're going to sell out. And you need to have a limit, because we don't want to be out there till midnight giving tours. And so you've got to limit the number of folks who are coming through the cemetery.
Correct. We can only ask the actors to do their presentations so many times.
Right.
And right now you're doing it 14 times.
14 times. So there you go. If we don't have it memorized by the beginning of the night, it'll be down by the end of the night. That's for sure.
right.
So that's how it goes. Well, Cindy, let me turn to you a little bit about your character. And you were actually part of the event in May, right?
Yes, I was.
You were another family person involved with a family that folks would recognize with the last name of Allen, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that character, and then about the one you're going to be portraying in September.
Okay. In May, I portrayed Augusta Allen,
Right.
who was instrumental in the Allen Theaters. She was the matriarch, and I was asked by a friend to fill in for someone who couldn't do it, and I was apprehensive at first. I didn't think it was something that was my forte, but I really enjoyed myself, and we were sold out at that show as well.
Right.
And so I enjoyed it.
You got bitten by the bug, and now you're back.
Yes.
See how it happens?
Yes,
That's how it
for
happens.
sure.
That's true. And so now you are Nettie Locke,
Yes.
in September at Dining with the Dead, and I played, I think, Nettie's husband, right? Mr. William Locke.
You
in
did
a couple of
portray
years.
William, yes.
But earlier, right? And so I know a little bit about the Locke story, but not
Yes.
about maybe Nettie's story. But tell me a bit about her. What have you learned about Nettie?
It's interesting the history I've learned just doing this the last time and
Right.
this time as well. She married her husband. He was 18 years her senior. They met on a wagon train coming this way. In 1879, they came as a married couple. They were married in Canyon City.
Okay.
And he had some children, and she went on to have 10 more. But they were very instrumental in the fruit industry here. He built the first school, started the first school here, and so
Nice.
they were very instrumental in this area.
Very
in
good.
that
And of
way.
course, we know Locke Avenue,
Yes.
which is here today, named after that family. So,
Yes.
so there you go.
And I thought it was interesting when he moved her here, where he moved her into.
It was
Oh.
a dirt dugout by present-day Ricketts Park, and it was just in a dirt bank, and it was wet and swampy, and
Well, there
so-
wasn't much here when they
No,
got here, right?
no.
And that was, I guess, the best they could do at the moment.
Yes, it was, and they had an infant, and so her husband put hay on the floor and covered it with a Navajo blanket just so the baby would have a place to crawl and
Right.
a clean place to be. But eventually they did move closer to downtown, and he built the first two-story wooden house.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Woods is the guy who built the first story brick house.
Yes, that's correct.
And then he went on to build a second one, and that's his kind of claim to fame as well, is that he built 2 brick homes here in Farmington. The first 2, I think, is what we understand. So, and as you mentioned, the one is still there on Cliffside Drive. I think it's been. Can you still tell it was brick, or has that one been covered with adobe, or can you see the
No,
brick?
it's still brick.
You can see it. Gotcha.
No one lives in it.
Okay, which explains the weeds, I suppose. That would do it. But the other brick house that he built is occupied, I believe, and that is, and the older folks, pardon me, will
They've been
recognize
here for a long time.
the old Mary Jo Walters real estate office on Main at Schwartz, and that was the second home that Mr. Woods built.
That's correct.
So there you go, everybody. So, and that's still standing too, obviously, but a little bit bigger home. So you can see how his family prospered over the years. He kind of moved out of the smaller home and built that one. Mm-hmm. So, and he was a big farmer as well. He had about 40 acres and planted some apple trees, and was one of the very first apple farmers here when he got here. So there's that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other characters, Jill McCreary, who are part of this event, and one who comes back each and every year. And I don't know why he's so popular with the crowds. Probably because he's a gunfighter and a cattle
And
rustler.
good looking.
Well, and that doesn't hurt. But yeah. But one of the Stockton brothers, right? And they've got quite the story.
Right. Ike Stockton is the only one that we bring back each year. And he had a brother, Port. Port lived out at Flora Vista, and Ike lived in Animas City, which is now Durango. And both of them ran this whole area. They were notorious cattle rustlers. And
I don't know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is such a fascinating story, because I don't know if folks realize just how Wild West Farmington, San Juan County was in the late 1800s when these two were kind of in their, I don't know,
Prime.
yeah, I guess, before they were shot and killed. But yeah, because it was cattle rustling, and there wasn't a lot of law enforcement because, again, at that point in time, we were part of Rio Arriba County, and the county seat was way over in Tierra Amarilla, and so that all added to some of the lawlessness that we hear about during this event, especially with the Stockton story.
That's right. Yeah, it's still in New Mexico territory back in those days.
That's right.
And now, Ike was not near as bad as Port was. Port killed probably 21, 22 men. There's not a lot of record of Ike killing people. Well, he killed who? Tom Nance.
Yeah, right.
But,
well, you know, he
yeah,
would say it was probably self-defense or an accident or,
Well, he was,
you know.
yeah, he was trying to avenge Port's death after
Right.
Port was murdered at his cabin out at Flora Vista.
And their cattle rustling was just cows that got onto their property and maybe,
Well, yeah,
they were just trying to,
they-
keep them under control.
Exactly.
Really wasn't illegal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people really like Ike because he always adds some humor. But this year we thought, what if we brought in his wife, Ellen? So Ellen is portrayed by Nikki Taylor. And I always wondered, what would it be like to be married to a cattle rustler?
Right.
I mean, he was on the road a lot, going out trying to support his family. And he was actually shot in Durango and taken to the smelter up there. And Ellen tells her part of the story about bringing the two small children there to see their father, because he did die the next morning. And then Ellen went on to make a life for herself. She married a lawyer from Durango.
Ironic. Right, but okay.
And
Yeah.
she actually...
But these stories we don't really hear about all the time, and so
that's
it's really
true.
fascinating to come and hear about it here at Dining with the Dead.
And I really don't want to say a lot more about that,
Sure.
because people are going to say, oh, wow, really? What
Right.
really ended up going on to happen?
Interesting.
So
Okay.
they have to come to Dining with the Dead.
Stay tuned and come to Dining with the Dead is what we say. That's true. But it just goes to show some of the work that you put into writing these stories and making sure that they are historically accurate, and you're using a lot of the resources from the museum, from local historians, and local documents that have been published, so that we know that these things that we're retelling are based on facts.
Exactly.
And true.
And the Historical Society as well.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And Debbie Braff is awesome to help write some of the scripts, and Judy Castleberry. So, and I learned to do some of them just out of necessity.
Right.
So,
But you've learned a thing or two over these years. I mean, listening to you just rattle off the relatives and who was related to who and married to who and did what. I mean, you've learned a lot, I think, in 8 years.
I have learned a lot. There's so much I don't know, though, of course.
Right. But a lot of these stories sometimes are interconnected. I think there was one year, probably more than one, that it seemed like there was a recurring theme throughout all the characters, and they were all talking about working with each other, and and a lot of it, I think, is still what we see today, in that I hear from a lot of the government officials and law enforcement that, San Juan County's kind of up on its own here in northwest New Mexico, and we don't have a lot of access to other resources, and we're really kind of on our own up here, and that seems to be what the feeling was 100 plus years ago, 150 years ago or so, when folks came here and there wasn't a lot of infrastructure, and they were on their own, and if they wanted to get farms, they needed to build some irrigation ditches, and if they wanted to figure out roads, they needed to build them, and schools and hospitals and all these people that just made it happen. They weren't waiting on anyone else to come in and do it for them, it seems.
And when you mention hospital, this year, George Sammons will be joining us.
Right.
And Dr. Sammons.
Right.
Harriet will be with him as well. But this is the first time we've ever portrayed Doc Sammons. And so he was partners with Dr. A.M. Smith. And together they created Farmington's first hospital.
Right.
And it was originally C.C. Muma's home.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
So there you go, and grew from that to what we know today as San Juan Regional Medical Center.
Yeah.
Over the years. But I'm just showing the list again, and you can see some of the names. Of course, Charlie Tyler's back as Reverend Hugh Griffin. He's done that character before, I think.
He did that our very, very first
Was
year.
it the first year? Okay.
Yes. And so, and that's an interesting story about Green Lawn Cemetery.
Right.
The Reverend Hugh Griffin owned that property, and the city Farmington had the property where the old Tibbetts Junior High is off Apache Street.
Right.
And so they needed more land, and there was 10 acres. So they, for $50, traded properties, and they moved the people that were buried there up to Green Lawn. That was also called a mesa, and there was a flood up there, and some of those coffins kind of washed away. And anyway, they got them. And
Okay, good. Thank you.
and so they're in Green Lawn today. And then when the Reverend Hugh Griffin passed away, he was actually buried outside the cemetery. So you can really see where they added that on. His headstone's out in the far corner.
Right.
And then Charlie will sing a hymn for us because
Nice.
he has a beautiful voice. It just
Right.
kind of resonates to the cemetery. Almost gives me goosebumps.
Right, and there's a picture of Charlie right there.
Yeah.
Portraying, I think Reverend Griffin, one of the person that he's portraying this year. So
Yes.
we haven't had our dress rehearsal yet, so these are all older photos, everybody. But
Yes.
You get the idea
Yes.
of what we're talking
Yes.
about. And the other fun thing that I like about this event, too, Jill McCrory, is when you're wandering through the cemetery, you're kind of passed by other graves and names that you recognize maybe from being in town, or relatives, obviously maybe descendants or ancestors of folks who were in town and things along that line. So it's kind of fun to see that as well up there.
And that's one of our challenges. Each group has a guide that's dressed
Right.
in costume from the era. And the guide has to keep her group or his group moving along because people visiting are like, oh, look over there. Oh, look. Look. Oh, I didn't know they were buried here.
That's right.
But
Focus
this
people.
year, if I could, Dan Waters portrays Mary Hubbard. And so
We have her picture. Here she is.
once we meet Mary Hubbard, she will talk about coming here in a covered wagon and bringing her piano. And so she and Clint came and put in the Hubbard Meat Market and Grocery down on Main Street, and she was in the historical walk.
Right.
Once we leave her, we'll walk to the back side of the cemetery and down, and then several of her relatives are there, and they have violins on their headstones.
Oh, well, she was so proud of that piano, right? I mean, that was, I think we think it's the first piano in Farmington that she brought with
Yes,
her. And that was a big deal to trudge that. I mean, I've moved a piano, and it's even hard today. I can't imagine moving one 150 years ago, but it's still a challenge.
Right. I mean, and coming in a covered wagon, and to me, it would be hard enough to have your husband and your small sons, and then having a big piano there as
Right.
well. So, yeah.
But she wanted to bring it, and that was a big deal. And then I think she talks a little bit about how she would play it in the house and have little recitals and things like that for folks to come by and listen. So that's kind of cool. So very good. Some of the other folks who are going to be part of this, another picture. Let's see. This gentleman, remind me who this is.
Eli Rufus Klein,
Ah, okay.
and he's portrayed by Jim Fentiman.
Right.
And he has an interesting story. Well, we have a lot of interesting
They're all
stories,
interesting.
don't we?
That's true.
Yes.
But Eli and his wife Olive, and Olive was 20 years younger than him. Once he moved here, and that's where he met Olive, and they married. They had a bakery down on Main Street on the east part, on the south side of the street. But that bakery caught fire one night in January of 1910, and that was Farmington's first devastating fire.
Burned down a lot of downtown at that time,
it
right?
It did.
Spread.
Back then, all the buildings were made of wood. There was the boardwalks that were wood. So when a fire started, it just,
Right.
went. And so this fire was so bad, they actually had to use dynamite to put it out.
Right, and explain what that means. I know we'll hear more about it at the story, right? But they actually blew up part of the block ahead of the fire so it would stop burning. I guess stop spreading. Wasn't that what they did?
I understood it
Or
was
blew it out?
Blew it out. That's
Okay.
right. But yeah. So, and you might be right.
Well, I don't know.
I know that once they used that dynamite and it,
Blew it out.
then
Okay.
they could use the water brigade then.
I see. Put the smoldering parts out, I guess.
And so they didn't rebuild that. They moved out to Fruitland
Right.
and purchased a trading post there.
Right.
And that area today, the way I understand it, is still known. I don't know. I can't say the Navajo word for it, but it means burnt bread.
That's what it means.
You know, the Navajos have such a great
Sure.
sense of humor.
That's true. Very true. Well, and there's great stories about the Klein family and the Fruitland Trading Post and things like that, and that's part of this story, is it not?
Yes,
And this family.
exactly.
So there you are. Very good.
Yeah, their son was Jack Klein.
Right.
Yeah, so Jack Klein Memorial Building.
There. That makes sense. So see how it all comes together, everybody, from the things that we know today, and some of these families that have been contributing to the community over these many years. Talk to me a little bit about Kiwanis. So this is a fundraiser for Kiwanis.
It is.
And again, tickets are, I don't know if we mentioned the price, but they are
$30.
$30. And they're available at Howard's Cleaners. We mentioned that as well, and they will probably sell out again before September 11th. And so Rio del Sol Kiwanis, and we know you've been on a number of times, or representatives from the club have been on a number of times to talk about the charities and the work that you do in the community, which you use this money for some of those things, and some of that's coming up usually in the fall, right? We hear a lot about your Clothes for Kids and Coats for Kids.
Correct, yeah.
Some of the other things that you do.
So that's what Dining with the Dead is. It's actually a fundraiser for the Kiwanis Children's Projects. So in November, we do Kiwanis Clothes for Kids, and each year we take at least 300 kids shopping, and they're able to spend $100 for clothes, school clothes. And this happens at Target. And Kiwanis does not select these children. They're selected by their teachers and their counselors as those most in need. So the families don't have like lots of money.
Sure.
And they receive a letter, the parents receive a letter inviting their child to come and shop for $100, and each child that shops has a volunteer that shops with them. And then in that letter also, they're invited about a week and a half later to come and select a warm winter coat. So we give out anywhere from 300 to 500 coats because their siblings are invited, and a lot of times we have adult coats, and so with the parents, if they need a coat, they can select a coat.
Right.
And then we do Kiwanis Shoes for Kids, and that's in September and October, and we give about 350 pairs of shoes and socks to children that attend the Boys and Girls Clubs. And then we do Scholastic Books for Kids, where we give 1,000 books each year to a Title I elementary school.
Wonderful. Well, and all these things are supported by events like this.
Right.
And so last year when you couldn't have Dining with the Dead, I know you were concerned about having the money to do all these things because there's still kids that needed clothes and coats and books and all these things that you just mentioned. And so you were still able to do some of those things, maybe at a lesser amount, or did you get donations?
We did, and we chose to people were so generous in our community, and so we raised really quite a bit of money. We took 240 kids shopping.
Okay.
We didn't want the groups to be real large because this is a hard evening to imagine. We break it into 2 evenings, but the line of kids and their parents go all the way back through Target and out the door and around.
Right.
So we thought maybe we should not have that many people in Target, and there was still kind of a limit on how many people could be in Target at a given time. So yeah. 240 kids. It was amazing.
Still able to help, which is wonderful. But this event will help even more, and that's a great thing. And again, I know you've mentioned, and some of your volunteers have mentioned the stories to me about some of these kids. I can't imagine, right, getting $100 to spend on clothes or new clothes or sneakers or whatever the case may be, because for a lot of these kids, maybe they only get hand-me-downs from the older brothers or sisters, and they get to go out and buy brand new clothes. That's
true. It's amazing, and to see the looks on these kids' faces when you're there and they really realize that these clothes that are in this basket are theirs to take home, and they're like, wow, I've never had my own clothes. I've always had to wear my big brother or my big sister's clothes.
Right.
So, and the parents are so appreciative because this way they don't have to spend the money on the clothes for kids. I mean, some of them, they really need the money for food.
Sure. No, it's a great program, and again, it is supported by the Rio del Sol Kiwanis Club. You meet regularly. What day do you meet?
Once a week at No Worries each Thursday. And if anybody's interested in Kiwanis, they're certainly invited to come. We always have great speakers, and this week our speaker is Cindy.
How about that? Wow, see?
Talking about her project, Rain Dance.
Very good. Give us a bit of plug for that, Cindy, if you would, before we run out of time this morning.
Yes, I will.
Talk a little bit about that.
So Rain Dance Association is a ranch in Flora Vista. This is my 26th year. It's a ranch for children with special needs. Well, I say children, it's all ages.
Okay.
And we've expanded to people who are participating in drug court. We have a senior program. I'm just now inheriting 3 more miniature horses that I can take around to senior living facilities. And we used to have one that would go in a person's home and visit. And we also have opened the ranch up to people with PTSD and families in crisis and things like that. So it's a small ranch with a big heart, but we're actually having a raffle now. It's a getaway package. It's an $800 value. The tickets are $10, and all the proceeds go to support the care for the animals.
Very nice.
So
well, and it's amazing to me sometimes when you talk about animals going in to visit with folks who maybe are ill or they have other issues or problems or whatever the case may be, how much they can help, an animal can help rather than a person can help.
There's a
That's
huge
what I'm trying to say. You mentioned
yes.
the small horse going in that you could take into people's houses, and that's got to be quite
Yes.
quite different to see that.
It's amazing. And like Jill was saying, the looks on their faces and the people that are nonverbal or, unable to move, and they try or they reach or they speak or it's an amazing program.
Right. Very,
yes.
very cool.
Yes.
We'll be talking more about that at this week's Kiwanis
I will.
meeting.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for coming in to visit with me a little bit about Nettie Locke and
you.
your character you'll be playing, of course, at Dining with the Dead. Good to have you here. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. It's an honor, and to know that I'm a part of a bigger picture, it is really, I'm glad to be a part of it.
It's a great organization
Yes.
and a great event for sure. Jill McCreary, thank you as always for coming in to talk about this great event and the work that Kiwanis does in the community. There's a lot of folks behind the scenes, I know, that make that all happen, but
Oh, for sure. We have so many volunteers for this, for Dining with the Dead.
right.
So
and the other programs too, for sure.
Yeah.
But we appreciate it all, and I will see you at dress rehearsal this week.
Yes.
Right? That's happening. So,
If it doesn't rain us out.
and hopefully not. Hopefully it won't. And we hope to see everybody else at the cemetery on September the 11th for Dining with the Dead. My guests from Rio del Sol Kiwanis this morning here on KSJE.
If we're going to spend billions improving broadband, we kind